if you get a headache on, like, a completely normal Tuesday, you just take a pill.
Right, yeah. You don't even think about it.
Exactly. If you get a cut, you apply a bandage.
Yeah.
I mean, we live in this bubble of profound predictability. We just expect modern medicine to have an answer for basically everything.
Oh, absolutely. We're very spoiled in that way.
We really are.
Yeah.
But I want you to imagine it's the mid-14th century.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you get a sudden chill, a fever, and then within a matter of hours, you find yourself frantically strapping a bald, panicking live chicken to your own neck.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a terrifying image.
Right. So today, welcome to the Deep Dive. We are stripping away the comfort of the modern world. Our source material today takes us directly into the teeth of the Black Death.
And as an expert on this period, I can tell you it is grim.
It is. We're stepping into the shoes of people facing an unstoppable, invisible killer, one that wiped out up to half of Europe. And we're exploring the desperate extremes they went to when they had absolutely no idea how to stop it.
It is a profound and, frankly, terrifying thought experiment.
Yeah.
Because we sit in this sanitized era, taking germ theory and antibiotics entirely for granted, which makes it incredibly easy to just view historical remedies as simple madness or, like, primitive ignorance.
Right. Just dismissing them as crazy.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that these bizarre, often horrific interventions were actually the logical conclusions of a society trying to solve an apocalyptic puzzle. They just had entirely the wrong set of pieces.
Yeah, they didn't lack intellect.
No, not at all. They had the drive to survive. They just, they lacked the microscope.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we need to set the stakes first. The sheer scale of the terror really explains the cures.
It does. It really does.
I mean, I want you, the listener, to just imagine looking at your own community, your own family, and knowing a literal coin flip is going to decide who survives the month.
Yeah, the statistics from the sources are just staggering. I mean, between 1346 and 1353, the plague swept across Asia, Europe, and North Africa.
And the numbers are just hard to wrap your head around, right?
Completely. Estimates range from 75 to 200 million lives lost.
Jeez.
Yeah. It moved relentlessly along trade routes, just devastating entire cities in a matter of weeks.
And it wasn't just the sheer number of the dead, right? It was how it happened.
Oh, the physical toll was horrific.
Yeah. Before we get into the medieval understanding of the disease, I want to ground this in biological reality. Because the people dying had no idea what was actually hunting them. So what was physically happening on a microscopic level?
Well, what they couldn't see was a bacterium called Yersinia pestis. And the true mechanism of this disease is basically a masterclass in biological horror.
Yeah.
So the bacteria hitchhiked along global trade routes inside the digestive tracts of fleas, and those fleas were carried by black rats.
Right.
When the flea ingests the bacteria, the Yersinia pestis actually multiplies and blocks the flea's gut entirely.
Oh, wow. So the flea's basically choking.
Exactly. The flea begins starving to death, so it starts biting hosts in an absolute frenzy, including humans.
Right, because it's desperate.
But because it can't swallow the blood, it regurgitates the bacteria directly into the human's bloodstream.
Wow. So a microscopic bite from a starving insect unleashes this massive chain reaction.
Yeah. The bacteria immediately travel through the human lymphatic system. They head straight for the nearest lymph node, which is usually, in the groin, the armpit, or the neck.
Ouch.
And once inside the node, the bacteria multiply exponentially. This massive replication causes the lymph nodes to swell into these agonizing hard masses.
Like the size of eggs. Right?
Yeah, the size of eggs, or even small apples. And these swollen nodes are called buboes, which is, the namesake of the bubonic plague.
Right, and then the fever spikes. The intense vomiting starts, and you get this severe tissue death.
Gangrene, yeah.
The tissue on the fingers, the toes, the tip of the nose, it literally turns black and dies while the patient is still alive.
Yeah.
And then comes the final delirium.
It's awful, and it moves incredibly fast.
You're watching loved ones become unrecognizable in a matter of days.
Right, so faced with that relentless, horrifying progression, their initial responses relied entirely on culturally established theories of health.
They did what they thought worked.
Exactly. They tried interventions that, to their minds, made perfect sense. So they applied thick pastes made from specific roots and herbs to their bodies.
Which seems pretty standard for medieval medicine.
Yeah. They drank holistic mixtures of sharp vinegar and crushed spices. And then the incredibly wealthy, they might even crush up emeralds and mix the powder into their food and water.
See, the logic there being what? Because precious stones are rare and, aesthetically pure,
Yeah.
eating them somehow imparts that purity to the body.
Yeah, it's this flawless internal logic based on a completely flawed premise.
Right.
Emeralds were rare. They were extracted from deep within the earth, untouched by the daily filth of the common world. So the medieval mind believed the uncorrupted nature of a precious gem could fend off the biological corruption of the disease.
Which brings us to the flowers.
Oh, yes, the posies.
People carried these pockets full of posies, constantly sniffing floral fragrances. I mean, we still sing about it in the nursery rhyme, Bring Around the Rosie, right?
We do.
Trying to mask the scent of death. But holding a handful of flowers up to your nose to stop an apple-sized infected lymph node? I mean, it feels like spraying cheap air freshener in a burning house.
That is a very accurate comparison.
How do they bridge the gap between smelling something pleasant and literal biological survival?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at miasma theory.
Okay.
The prevailing medical consensus of the 14th century was that disease wasn't transmitted by touch or insect bites or microscopic pathogens.
Right. They had no concept of germs.
None. They believed disease was transmitted by bad air or miasma, toxic vapors arising from decaying matter, unwashed bodies, or stagnant water literally carried the sickness.
So the smell itself was the danger.
Exactly. The primary way to identify this corrupted, dangerous air was its foul smell.
Got it. So to them, the bad smell wasn't just a byproduct or a symptom of the plague. The bad smell was the plague.
Yes. So the defensive strategy naturally becomes altering the air you breathe.
Right.
If you can intercept the foul air with a sweet, pure scent from flowers or aromatic herbs, or even burning specific fragrant woods like pine and juniper in your home,
You believe you're actually fighting it?
you believe you are actively neutralizing the pathogen before it can enter your lungs. So those pockets full of posies were not just a comfort measure to hide the stench of the dead.
They were armor.
Yeah, they were deployed as a literal biological shield against a weaponized atmosphere.
Okay, so you're clutching your flowers, you're washing your room in vinegar, maybe crunching on expensive crushed emeralds if you have the cash.
Right.
And the plague is still spreading, the buboes are still swelling, the passive defenses are failing spectacularly.
This marks the turning point in the source material.
Yeah.
When the defensive measures fail, the medical establishment of the era realizes they have to pivot.
They have to get aggressive.
Exactly. They escalate from trying to repel the disease to actively, frantically trying to extract it from the human body. So doctors began consulting older medical texts, relying heavily on a concept called sympathetic magic.
Sympathetic magic. The belief that like attracts like, and that living organisms share this invisible pulling life force.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the Vickery method, named after Dr. Thomas Vickery, a medical professional of the era. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, it gets very strange.
I was reading this part of the source material, just shaking my head in sheer disbelief at the mechanics of this. Could you walk us through what a doctor in the 14th century would actually prescribe and perform here?
Okay, so the physician would procure a live chicken.
Step 1, get a chicken.
Right. The first step was to carefully pluck the feathers completely bare from the bird's back and its rear end.
Okay.
Then, taking this bald, live, inevitably panicking bird, the doctor would strap its bare rear end directly onto the patient's swollen, throbbing buboes.
I have to ask, I mean, is this basically a medieval attempt at using a living creature as a biological sponge to soak up a spill?
Yes, that's actually a great way to put it.
Because the texts say they didn't just do this for a few minutes. They left the bird strapped there until the chicken itself became ill.
Yep.
And then they would unstrap it, get another freshly plucked live chicken, and strap the new one on, creating this horrific relay race until either the patient or the chickens died.
And usually it was the patient.
Right. But how did they justify a chicken's rear end as a medical extraction device?
It connects directly back to that sympathetic magic we mentioned. And the physical symptoms of the plague. The buboes were severely inflamed, incredibly hot to the touch, and throbbing with the patient's elevated pulse.
Yeah, full of infection.
Right. Now, a freshly plucked chicken, particularly around its rear, is also incredibly warm and highly vascular.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, so the prevailing medical logic dictated that the intense heat and the life force of the healthy animal would act like a magnet,
Drawing it out.
drawing the corrupted heat and the sickness out of the human body and absorbing it into its own tissue.
Wow. The sheer desperation of trying to stick a bird to a dying person's neck is hard to fathom.
It is.
But looking at it from a psychological angle, I suppose it provided something crucial in that moment. It gave people an action to take.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychological comfort of action in a crisis cannot be overstated.
Wiping a feverish brow with a wet cloth feels helpless. Plucking a chicken, monitoring the bird's health, swapping it for a new one. That is a complex, proactive ritual.
Dr. Vickery was providing a tangible physical process in a world where an invisible force was massacring entire populations. It gave families a sense of agency,
A feeling that they were combating the disease on its own terms.
however misguided those terms were.
Yeah. But when the living chicken sponge inevitably fails to draw the sickness out, the medieval playbook escalated again.
Oh, it gets worse.
The focus shifted from pulling the disease out from the surface to aggressively forcing the body to purge the infection from within. If you can't draw it out, you have to flush it out.
This leads us into the widespread practice of bloodletting.
Right.
Now, bloodletting predates the Black Death by centuries. It stems from the ancient Greek and Roman system of humorism championed by physicians like Hippocrates and Galen.
The four humors, right.
Yes, the belief was that human health was governed by four distinct fluids, or humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Any illness was simply an imbalance of these fluids.
So for a plague victim, the diagnosis was an excess of infected or bad blood.
Exactly.
To let the body's good blood reset and heal the system, the corrupted fluid had to be drained. And the source material highlights this fascinating, dark, socioeconomic divide in how this was actually done.
Oh, absolutely. The wealthy could afford a relatively refined experience.
They paid top dollar for professionals to come in and apply medicinal leeches to their bodies.
Right, because the leeches offer a localized, precise extraction. They naturally secrete a mild anesthetic and an anticoagulant when they bite.
So it's basically painless.
Yeah, making the process fairly painless and controlled for the patient.
But if you were a peasant, boutique leeches were entirely out of the question.
Oh, yeah.
The cheaper alternative was a physical incision. A barber surgeon, or even just a family member, would take a blade, slice open a vein often near the site of the swollen lymph node, and just let you bleed freely into a bowl.
Which is terrifying.
Or they would use a technique called cupping, which might sound familiar because some alternative medicine practitioners still use a version of it today.
Yeah, athletes use it a lot.
Right. They would heat a glass or clay cup to create a vacuum and press it onto the skin. The intense suction forcefully pulls blood up to the surface so the skin could be lanced and drained.
The underlying premise there treated the human body like a stagnant pond. To restore the flow of fresh, healthy water, you first had to forcefully drain the swamp.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive when your body is already using every resource it has to fight off a massive infection.
You're just bleeding out a patient who is rapidly declining.
Yeah. Yet as brutal as bloodletting sounds, it is practically sterile compared to the next purge method.
Yes. This is where it gets truly disturbing.
When drawing blood wasn't enough, some victims believed an extreme internal rot required extreme external and internal measures. So people began aggressively coating their bodies, literally rubbing themselves down, in a paste made of human feces and urine.
It's the ultimate inversion of every hygienic instinct we possess as a species.
And they weren't just rubbing it on their skin or open sores. The sources document sufferers actively bathing in urine. And some were actually drinking it.
Just horrible.
Convinced it would violently cleanse and flush their internal systems. This even sparked a bizarre microeconomy. Desperate doctors and families were paying handsome sums of money to collectors who could provide clean urine from healthy individuals.
Think about that.
Meaning victims were drinking and bathing in the waste of complete strangers just to survive.
Yeah.
But here is where we need to talk about the actual biology of this. If someone has ruptured buboes, open sores from bloodletting, and a severely compromised immune system, and they coat themselves in raw human feces, I mean, what is physically happening to them? Because wouldn't this just kill them much faster?
This raises an important question, and it's a heartbreaking certainty.
Yes.
It would kill them faster.
Yeah.
Yersinia pestis had already decimated the host's immune system. By packing open wounds and inflamed lymph nodes with raw human waste, they were introducing incredibly dangerous bacteria like E. coli, Staphylococcus, various Streptococcus strains directly into the bloodstream.
Which just causes massive, rapid secondary infections.
Exactly. The patient would go into severe septic shock.
So instead of just fighting the plague, their completely exhausted immune system is suddenly bombarded by a host of new, lethal bacterial infections.
They were accelerating their own demise. The tragic irony is profound. but look at it through the lens of a 14th century mind.
Okay.
Human waste is the physical embodiment of the body purging toxins. It is the material expelled specifically because it is no longer needed.
Right, it's the bad stuff leaving.
Exactly. To an uneducated mind in utter despair, reintroducing that waste was viewed as a harsh, visceral signal to the body, commanding it to violently purge the ultimate toxin, the plague itself.
Man. When scraping the literal bottom of the barrel failed, the focus shifted from what you were willing to endure to what you could afford to buy.
Class dynamics were everything.
Right, the panic affected everyone in the city equally, but your bank account completely determined your poison. We mentioned the wealthy using emeralds and leeches, but the ultimate medieval status symbol in plague medicine was a substance called theriac.
Theriac has a fascinating lineage.
Yeah, tell me about this.
It was a highly prized, centuries-old concoction originally formulated by the ancient Greeks and Romans as a universal antidote to venoms and poisons.
Like snake bites and stuff.
Right. But by the time the Black Death struck Europe, it had evolved into this incredibly complex, expensive panacea.
The sources describe it as this mysterious, thick liquid or paste that could contain up to 80 different ingredients, occasionally including things like roasted viper flesh.
Very exotic ingredients.
Right. They would mix it with syrup to make a sweeter mixture called treacle to make it easier to swallow, or they'd smear it directly onto the skin.
Blech.
But the main active ingredient, the thing that actually made the patient feel different, was a massive quantity of opium.
Yeah, the opium was doing the heavy lifting there.
Wow.
And the formulation and the aging process of theriac took months, if not years, to complete, which just drove the price into the stratosphere.
So only the richest of the rich.
Exactly. It was strictly reserved for the elite, the nobility and wealthy merchants who found themselves trapped in plague zones, unable to flee to their countryside estates.
So what does this all mean? When I look at theriac, I see the medieval equivalent of an ultra-expensive modern wellness supplement promoted by influencers. It's highly exclusive, packed with dozens of exotic ingredients nobody can pronounce, and promises a shield against all harm. Except, the reality is the incredibly wealthy were just getting heavily sedated on opium while the plague killed them.
Pretty much.
Which, honestly, facing a disease this horrific and painful, slipping away in an opium haze is probably the most merciful outcome anyone could hope for.
It functioned remarkably well as palliative care.
Right.
It did absolutely nothing to stop the replication of the plague bacteria, but it significantly dampened the severe physical pain of the buboes and the sheer psychological terror of those final days.
But if you were poor, trapped in a teeming infected city, an 80-ingredient opium syrup was entirely out of reach. You were left with the desperate man's theriac.
And this is where things get really grim again.
Yeah, according to the historical records, the peasant class resorted to consuming harsh, corrosive chemicals. They were actively drinking mercury and arsenic.
A truly harrowing reflection of their desperation.
I mean, these are heavy metals and potent toxins that immediately begin destroying human tissue upon ingestion. Let's break down that destruction, because we aren't just talking about a bad stomachache.
Oh, no.
If a medieval peasant drinks arsenic or mercury to cure the plague, what are the actual symptoms of the cure?
Well, consuming mercury or arsenic causes immediate, violent trauma to the body. Arsenic ingestion leads to severe abdominal cramping, vomiting of blood, massive gastrointestinal bleeding, and multi-organ failure.
Awful.
And mercury causes severe neurological damage, violent tremors, and kidney failure. It literally burns and dissolves the esophagus and stomach lining as it goes down.
I'm trying to follow the underlying logic here.
No.
I mean, did they assume that because the plague was this unimaginably deadly, monstrous force, the only weapon capable of fighting it inside the body was an equally deadly poison?
Yes.
Like setting a controlled forest fire to burn out a larger forest fire?
That is exactly the core rationale. It's the application of alchemical principles to human biology. You deploy a recognized, potent, destructive force to obliterate the invasive corruption.
Wow.
Furthermore, it highlights the absolute collapse of long-term consequences.
That makes perfect sense. When you are facing a disease with a perceived 100% mortality rate, the concept of toxic side effects completely loses its meaning.
Exactly.
If a physician warned you that drinking arsenic will irreparably destroy your liver, your calculation is immediate. I won't survive until Friday anyway, so hand me the cup.
It is a dark, heavy catalog of human endurance in the face of absolute incomprehension.
It really is. And that phrase, the collapse of consequence, perfectly encapsulates the atmosphere we've been exploring today. We've traced a harrowing path through our sources.
We really have.
From clutching fragrant posies and trusting the pure essence of crushed emeralds to the visceral desperation of strapping bald chickens to dying patients, we've seen the horrors of the urine economy and the tragic irony of human waste pastes causing lethal sepsis, all the way to people actively swallowing arsenic just to feel like they had a fighting chance.
Yeah.
I want to speak directly to you, the listener, for a moment. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to remember how incredibly easy it is for us to sit in our climate-controlled rooms with our modern amenities and feel disturbed by these interventions.
It's very easy to judge.
It is easy to judge the logic of drinking mercury or paying for clean urine. But we only possess the luxury of that judgment because we live in the era of microscopes, of antibiotics, of widespread vaccines.
We understand the biological mechanics of our enemies.
Yes. In the mid-14th century, the enemy was an invisible phantom, and sheer terror compels human beings to do unthinkable things.
It strips away all societal pretense, leaving only the raw, frantic drive for survival.
I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to mull over, building on everything we've uncovered. Consider the incredible, scientifically proven power of the human placebo effect.
Oh, that's a fascinating angle.
In a terrifying apocalyptic world where literally no medicine on Earth could stop the biological reality of Yersinia pestis, think about the immense psychological relief a patient might have felt simply by having a caregiver carefully apply that expensive Tyriac paste.
Yeah.
Or even just the act of a family member taking the time to pluck a chicken and strap it to their arm.
The profound intervention of simply being cared for.
Exactly. Could the mere action of receiving dedicated treatment, no matter how objectively absurd, toxic, or medically useless it was, have provided the only true moment of comfort and reduced panic these victims experienced before the end?
It very well might have.
Because when our internet goes down, we panic. But when your entire world is ending, maybe just having someone fiercely try to fix it is the only medicine that truly matters.